Hello everyone and welcome to my build video for MAGICKA NIGHTBLADE number 2. So this is the second build. It's going to differ slightly from my first build in that this one is a little squishier than the previous one. But if you get the playstyle down for this two-handed play, it can really work out almost exactly the same. But this one has a far higher damage threshold for the amount of sustain you get. This build hits incredibly hard if you master it. So it's all going to be about min-maxing your approach to the build, trying to practice how you get down the two-handed play. I would not suggest using this build unless you have used the previous build I've made. I would really suggest practicing in the first build first. Otherwise, you are going to struggle because mastering the whole two-handed play, you want to be tanky to learn all of that stuff. It's not easy to get down, and yeah, do it in the tanky setup first, then move to this setup, and you can try in that. So, first things first. The sets. We are using the following. Keep in mind, I've said a lot of things about one of these sets. Listen to me closely here. First set is going to be Amber Plasm. Exactly the same set as last time, but this time we've moved it onto our jewelry and 2 armor pieces. It doesn't matter which those are. Just make sure that it's not on your chest plate, and it doesn't matter then. Everything else can be whatever it likes. Now, on those glyphs, we're going to run a reduced cost. You should always have a reduced cost on a MAGICKA NIGHTBLADE. If you are not wearing a reduced cost, you are wasting an enormous amount of sustain. No matter what build you play on a MAGICKA NIGHTBLADE, you're going to be casting skills on a regular rotation that are going to cost you a lot. If you're in heavy armor where you're not shielding, you got a high cost. If you're in light armor, you're going to shield or cloak a lot, you've got a high cost. It's always really useful to have at least one of those. We're then running a magic recovery glyph. You could also get around this. As you can see in the top left, I have Kenna. You could change that to choke form and run spell damage here. Not a tremendous difference. I really think the extra 50 or so recovery over the spell damage is more useful. So I think recovery here and spell damage on the monster is better, but each to their own, run whatever you like. And then we're running spell damage on the final glyph. So as I mentioned before, we're then using 1 Kenna on the shoulder. Note that that's impen and triglyph. All of our armor in this build is going to be impen and triglyph. We need the stamina. That's going to be really important for the build. And the impen is the only truly useful trait here. Well fitted isn't terrible. So if you need a second trait, I'd go for well fitted here. We are able to roll dodge a fair bit in this build. It's got a lot of stamina sustain. But yeah, that's a great one to go for. The other really nice thing about going for Kenna, and it sounds ridiculous, is that it gives you weapon damage on top of the spell damage. Now, it's such a small difference, but since we're light attacks are coming from a two-hander, which is physical damage, the weapon damage will slightly increase your overall pressure. So I like the Kenna piece myself. Again, each to their own, whatever you fancy. Our last set then is a set that I personally believe is very overrated except in one situation. And that's the situation we're using right now, which is with Witch Mother's food. And that is Shackle Breaker. So Shackle Breaker, I believe, is not nearly as good as people make out. It's a good set, the stats are good, but I don't really find it slot without Witch Mothers. If I run that build with Witch Mothers, however, which is something I'm using also on DK build, which you'll be seeing pretty soon, you get a really interesting amount of recovery with a sustainable amount of stamina. So all I'm using Shackle Breaker for is a source of stamina sustain, whilst allowing myself to go Witch Mother to transition a lot of my damage into the Magicka base, because I've already got magic recovery from the Witch Mother's food, if that even made any sense. Like I said, you want to leave your body, because you can make that heavy. We are going to run 6 light and 1 heavy, all triglyph, all impen. You want the body to be the impen just because the base resistances are way higher than other pieces. Now, if you do find you're running out of stamina, you could also run medium legs as well. I would not advise it. The amount of stamina sustain extra you get and the extra stats you get from Undaunted is really miles outweighed by the light armor passives here. But again, each to their own. If you want to do that, you obviously have the option available to you. I would suggest not doing it and sticking with Shackle Breaker, but whatever. Our weapon then is going to be Shackle Breaker's sharp two-handed sword. It has to be a sword, it has to be Shackle Breaker, it has to be sharpened. There's a reason it needs to be Shackle Breaker and not Amber Plasm if by some random reason you have Amber Plasm weapons. And that's that next patch with the trait changes, I can simply craft a different trait here. So it's going to allow that openness for the next patch, which is why in the first place I even made this build. Front bar glyph, obviously we're going for Oblivion there, a lot of burst damage, pretty broken mechanic. And then the back bar, we're going to go for a Resto Staff, crafting whatever styles you like. That wants to be defending at the moment. Again, that will change next patch. And you want to have the weapon damage and spell damage enchant on that one there. Alright, that's that. So, our stats are looking the following. This is all unbuffed in a duel. We are sitting on 36k Magicka. More than enough. You can get more than that because I am, as you can see, and this is important for yourself as well, running 5 points in stamina. Now, in a CP environment, you can get away with dropping those for Magicka again. I play a lot on no CP. If you're playing no CP, I would advise keeping those points in there. You're going to notice the difference. It's going to be another roll dodge right there. So leave 5 points in stamina, the rest in Magicka, each to your own. You can't get that any other way because you're already all triglyphed. So you have to change the character points here. It doesn't change anything to do with your damage, anything like that. The damage this build is enormous. There is a reason behind that. But then 24.3k health, 15.6k stamina. This is obviously again for champion points. Magic recovery is through the roof, unbuffed 2.42k. That is huge for a concealed weapon build. If you find you're over sustaining, which I doubt if you're playing this properly, but you may, you can always change that last recovery glyph for a spell damage. I would suggest leaving 2.4k. 2.4k recovery is a really sweet spot for a build that cloaks a lot. I'm not going to go into the details of explaining that yet, but I might in a future video explain why 2.4k is such a good number. But it's where you always want to be, in my opinion, for a concealed weapon build. Each to their own, whatever. Change it again as you like. You don't have to copy the build, just use what you want. We're then using stamina recovery, obviously coming from the other bit. We are 1.3k on there. Super high Magicka unbuffed stamina recovery. Now, you can technically amp this crit up even more. If you wanted to use a spell power pot for your major sorcery, and change entropy off the bar, which is one of the skills we're going to run, you can get this crit up as high as 49 or even above 50% in Cyrodiil. I still personally like the extra stam sustain. My stam sustain is so high that I can roll dodge as much as a medium build right now. That's why I keep the stamina as it is. If you don't want to go that way, you can run spell power pots, and that's going to amp your crit up a lot, which is again going to massively increase the damage. But yeah, I'll come on to why in a sec as well. And then we're using spell damage, 2.13k unbuffed. Pretty high. Our crit resist sitting on 1.8k because of all the impem. Now, a few things to mention here. We are a vampire for the extra recovery. Again, feel free to drop that if you don't like the fire. I would suggest keeping it. It's really good when you're cloaking and moving around. The big one is this thing here. We are using the Shadow Munda. So this is one of the big changes that this build opens up alongside the ability to get Kennet in for the extra spell damage with this compared to Wizards. 12% extra crit damage. Now, with how high our crit is, 39 unbuffed. And again, if we go for Mage Light or we go for Spell Purpose or whatever, we get 50%. And whenever we're in Cloak, we're guaranteed a crit. Your damage is through the roof from this crit. 12% extra crit damage is huge. You can hit some massive damage in this, similar to my Stygian build, and I'll demonstrate that on our target in a sec, who is a squishy guy, but yeah, it will demonstrate that. And I did mention before we are using the Witch Mother's food. Again, obvious reasons for that. Okay, so skills. We're going to start this off the bat. If you've not seen my original Standblade build, watch the original Standblade build. It's nearly identical, if not identical. But first skill is the most unquestionable, important skill in the game for a concealed weapon Magic Blade right now. If you're running dual wield, you are doing this wrong. You need to get a two-hander and this skill. It is brilliant. Forward momentum. So this is a cheap stamina skill, 2.5k. Our recovery is more than enough to sustain this. It's a tiny heal over time, doesn't matter. Major brutality, I guess it's sort of nice. It slightly increases our weapon damage on the light attacks. But the reason we run this is the final bit. Activating this ability removes all snares and immobilizations from you and grants immunity to them for 8 seconds. 8 seconds of no snares. That is so good. The amount of snares that you see around in Cyrodiil at the moment is enormous. Everything snares you. Everything. Literally everything. Alright? So, running with full momentum opens your chance to cloak successfully. If you're not snared, you can move. If you can move, you can get a cloak off. That is essential. Now, I know every time I make a build with a two-hander on a Magic Blade, this is the second time, I always get some knob complaints that dual is better. It's not. It does exactly the same. Dual passive here is this one here. Each sword increases your damage done by 2.5%. The base spell damage, I can't be bothered showing this. If you want to see us demonstrated, check in on my previous video. The base spell damage from 2 individual swords and 1 individual two-hander is the same. The passives are the same, therefore the damage is the same. It's identical damage to go over two-hander or a dual. The only thing dual opens is an extra slot. But if you want to go 5-5-2, maybe I'll even make the setup. There is another way of doing that as well, which is go back bar blood form, front bar wizards, 2-piece monster set. But another day, another story. Here you can see swords increase your damage done by 5%. does exactly the same job. Go with a two-hander, bang the skill on, don't be stupid. It's so much better than dual wield. And until you master the art of this skill, you might not realize that, but once you master that skill, it's not even comparable. It's like playing a fucking Mag Sword compared to a Mag NIGHTBLADE. It's a huge difference. Next one, concealed weapon. This is going to be our spammable DPS. Now, this buffed tooltip is really high. It's going to hit super high. I have hit 14k on players in Cyrodiil without Emperorship or anything like that so far. That's my record. It hits like a truck. Really, 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 really hard with the Shadow Mundus and the way we're set up. So, yeah, really nice one there. Merciless is going to give us that 8% damage buff from Minor Berserk. Don't run Slime Crawl. You've already got the buff here. If you ever decide to run that, don't waste your time. And, of course, you get that 5 light attack for the big proc. Then we have our Cloak. Obviously, we're going for the crit morph here. We're stacking into crit. No brainer on that one. You want to siphon a skill on your bar. It doesn't have to be siphoning attacks, but you need it for the 8% Magicka passive. We take siphoning attacks for some extra sustain and a bit of healing. And then our ulti, again, is the anomaly. We're going with Incap. Now, I've compared this. Soul Harvest hits about 1.2k more damage. But Soul Harvest doesn't CC. I believe that Incap is worth it over every other ulti right now. I've tried Soul Tether. It's a bit expensive. It does do a chunk more damage, but doesn't. Yeah, it's nowhere nearly as spammable as this. And the minor berserk on this, sorry, the major berserk on this, for the extra damage is really, really, really powerful. Sorry, the empower, not major berserk. The 20% empower from this is really, really powerful. 20% more damage on your concealed after this hits super hard, which again I'll demonstrate in a sec. And we get Mage Defilement and all that stuff. This ultimate is brilliant. So I promise you, although it looks stamina, it's scaling off your highest resources. A couple of patches ago, again, I got a lot of criticism from this that people aren't in the know. Please, make sure you know stuff before you comment on that sort of stuff. This scales, as any ultimate does now, on your highest resources. It's scaling on my spell damage, my magic, and my spell crit. It does everything I need. Back bar then is going to be exactly the same as last time. Double take, mobility, dodge chance. Cripple is going to be our gap closer. And I'll show that as well in a second. Really important you realise that one. Cripple is going to root our opponent. The dot is brilliant. You're going to have that up all the time. But what we're going to do when we want to gap close is cripple for the root. They're going to be stationary. Even if they're running shuffle or some other snare remove, doesn't matter. You're still going to get the dot up. It's going to give you a major expedition, at which point we back bar swap into cloak. We go in and we're going to be moving really fast at concealed weapon. It's just as fast as an ambush. It's just miles cheaper and more damage per second. So stick with this skill. Lotus Fan, in my opinion, is overpriced for what it does. Each to their own. Heal ward, big heal, big damage shield, must have. That's your way of surviving. Entropy, nice little dot. I run the one for the health here because we have one less shadow skill on the back bar than the front. Otherwise, our back bar has less health. Again, if you run spell power pots, I would suggest dropping structured entropy off for one of two skills. Shadow image is going to give you a small dot, the ability to kite even more, though honestly, I strongly believe you don't need it with full momentum. But more importantly, it's going to give us a really reliable single target minor main, which will really help you in duels against high damaging targets. Twisting Path is a really nice dot. That's a good option. And then you could also put Veil on the back bar if you really wanted, but that's a waste of time. But just try to keep the health up on this bar. Finally, we are using Fear. Fear is a CC. Simple enough on that front. And then our ulti is going to be the Resto Staff ulti. This ulti is a beast. Huge heal. You want the Lights Champion morph, minor protection, major protection, sorry. Essentially, if you have that up, you are just not going to die. It needs a nerf, but whatever. So, let me show a few things here. So, first thing I'm going to show is how we gap close. What I will do is I will cripple, cloak, he's rooted, I'm there. That's how we're going to gap close, and then we'll hit him from stealth or whatever we got, alright? Let me quickly explain to my target what he needs to do here. Nice, he's healed up. Ah, he's only got damage shield. Okay, well, whatever. I'll just kill him in a sec. The next thing I'm then going to show is how we actually get the damage in full burst. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to cast my full rotation. So he's going to be up in health. What I'm going to do is light attack for my glyph, entropy. Then I'm going to incap. If he's not dead, I'm then going to conceal to show you a full conceal. I may have to do this twice because he's on 17k health. I may honestly one-shot him here, but we'll see. So we go light attack entropy, that's a full buff. Incap, concealed. That incap critted for 11.9k there. What I want to get is a crit concealed after that incap. Because if I can get that, I can show you how much of a difference the Shadow Mundus hit. So That was a 5.8k uncrit concealed. The difference between that and a crit is huge. Even if your opponent is stacking a lot of impen, you are still going to hit really, really, really hard if you master this. So I really suggest running this Shadow Mundus and running this setup again when you master that damage. So here we go again. Light attack entropy for the glyph. Incap. Concealed. There's the crit. 9.3k. We are actually unbuffed from my glyph there. You can hit over 10k with this so easily. And on a super, super, super squish target, you can really hit huge. Like I said, I've hit a 14k after the Empower before. That's my record so far. It's really nice. Alright. So now I'm going to show you a few different rotations we can go about this. And I may end up killing him, but I'm just going to show you a few different rotations you want to do in a fight. Because playing a melee MAGICKBLADE requires a specific playstyle. And if you play a specific playstyle, you're predictable. If you're predictable, you're a dead man walking. Don't be predictable in this game. So, every time I cloak, what he's going to expect is for me to hit here. And sometimes we're going to do that. That's going to be your first combo. You're going to go in from stealth and concealed. Big damage. If he's unshielded, you're going to hit huge. A really reliable CC and a huge CC. I think it's 6 seconds. And we're going to get him down from that. Option number 2. Alright, and this is something I will use when he blocks. I'm going to cloak. He is going to block. And I'm going to light attack entropy. That's 2 ticks on his block. He's wasted 2 ticks of stamina. His block is getting drained. It's a nice way to break down a heavy target's block. At all times when I'm kiting, I'm going to keep forward momentum up and my dodge chance up for good mobility. I'm going to kite in with my dots. I'm going to go in, and then anytime I get an incap, I'm going to heavy attack incap, and then light attack concealed afterwards. If we get crits, that's going to be a one-shot. Final thing is your merciless combo, so let's quickly build that up. You'll go light attack entropy, sorry, light attack cripple, light attack entropy, light attack dodge, cloak, go in, concealed, light attack concealed, and then it's ready. It's up to you whether you cast it at that point. I will normally then back out, come in, go back in, heavy attack, incap, and empower for the merciless. But he's quite low health here, so I'm not going to do it. And just to show you how hard that merciless can hit, I will quickly get that for you now. And I'll show you how hard the crit merciless can hit as well for a final rotation here. The big thing is, with this sort of build, don't run the same playstyle. Don't always concealed after that cloak. If you always concealed after a cloak, you're obvious. Everyone knows it's coming, they're going to block. Make sure you predict when that's coming and mix up your playstyle. Break down the stamina if they overblock. If I'm wearing a stick and I block a light attack and a cripple, I'm going to waste like 3k stamina. That's tons. That's a CC break. So just slowly break down the resource with that. Anytime you've got high offense, of course you can spam conceal. We've got a good recovery here. We can spam that. So to get the merciless up real quick, I'm going to light attack him a few times. Going to wait a sec here so my glyph is ready. Get my ultimate up. Then I'm going to go light attack entropy, incap for the empower, and merciless for the crit. 18.6k on our target. We hit like a truck in this build. It's really strong damage. And that's down to the way we're playing the crit style of this. Even against impen, you're going to hit really, really, really hard. And our spell damage base is fine anyway. So last but not least, it's going to be our CP. We're going to move into there. We are running in the green tree. And I really think this is close to min-max. But again, it's up to you if you change it. 56 in Warlord for break free. Nice stamina to save. We want to save as much stamina as possible. 5 in bashing. You want a few in there just in case you need to interrupt. It's quite a nice save on stamina. But you don't want to go over the top. It does scale pretty good, but it's not essentially that useful. So I'll put a few points in there. We then go 49 Mooncalf. We've got a lot of stamina recovery. Points in there is completely viable. 56 in Arcanist and 7 in Tenacity. If you find you never heavy attack, you can also move those Tenacity into Mooncalf and make this 56 as well. That will do exactly the same job. Sometimes heavy attack might be useful though. 7 scales pretty good, so bang him in there. 37 in Tumbling. It looks like a lot, but this build has good stamina sustain. 16k stamina and 1.3k unbuffed stamina recovery. We're buffed to like 1.56. You can roll dodge a ton in this build, so reducing that cost even more just makes it more and more viable as a way to mitigate damage. It's a nice way to get out of trouble. 56 in Elfborn. This scales much better than most of the trees here, and we get a lot of crit damage. 20% extra crit damage. Beautiful. Bang the points in there. 7 in Blessed. Any single build that I run that has any heal, which is every build, I have 7 in Blessed, 7 in Quick Recovery. Any more is a waste in most, unless you may be a Mage Templar. And 7 in Blessed, it scales really, really good. So yeah, 7 in there is great. 49 in Elemental Expert to get us over that threshold for the base damage on magic. 31 in Shattering Blows. Really underestimated tree this. It's going to break down Sorks a lot. Big help here. And Sork's going to be the hardest thing for you to fight here because you can't really crit through the shields. Having a way to break down those shields more is going to really help you. Sorks, difficult to fight. Honestly, if they're not mind camping, I will beat them almost every time. If a Sork is going to mind camp and they're not seeming too bad, I would honestly just suggest leaving them. Don't engage Sorks in the mines. It's such a fucked skill anyway, but there you go. 56 in Master Arms for our direct damage. Obvious place to point points here. Really strong passive. 11 in Thaumaturge. We have those points spare. We do run 2 dots, Entropy and Cripple. It's a bit extra damage on those. And finally, the Red Tree. 56 in Ironclad to reduce the direct damage we take. 1 in Light Armor Focus because it's spare. It's a bit resistant. We're using light armor, not heavy. 40 in Thick Skin for dots. 37. These are my normal setup for every single build I run. 37, 40. Scale's great for those. And then 13 in Bastion for the Heal Ward. 19 in Elemental Expert Defender for light attacks. It's a huge chunk of DPS. People don't realize how important that is. Light attacks are a huge chunk of DPS. Scales brilliantly. Definitely put points in that. Again, 19 scales good. And there's the 7 in Quick Recovery. So I think I've gone over everything. I could be wrong though. Who knows? But yeah. Master the two-handed playstyle first in the original build. It's an easier one to play. This one's harder to play. But once you master the art of avoiding damage, the base damage from this is so high from the crits. We really 2-hit almost every target. Even tanks die very fast. So go this way once you master it. I think it's got more aggression. You may find you die more. Just slowly practice and you'll get there. I promise this is better than the other ways you want to try to play this build. I promise you that. Good luck with the build. I'll see you out there. Please don't kill me with my own build. And yeah.